Child sacrifice. What does the Bible have to say about it? And is there a possibility that we today in our society are actually engaging in some form of child sacrifice? Let's talk about it. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hillary, and I am so excited that you are joining me today. So go ahead and grab yourself a cup of coffee or hot tea or water, and let's talk about the Word. So my husband and I have a Chevrolet truck, and when we got the truck, there was an interesting thing that I noticed about how the system works. And there's this specific notification that took me off guard because I'd never experienced it before, and it's called the rear seat reminder. So what happens essentially is that whenever you get into the car, if you have recently opened and then closed one of your back doors, it initiates this rear seat reminder so that when you close your door, cut on your car, go wherever you're going to go, you get out of the car, it goes ding, 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 and it brings up this picture on the front where you're between your wheel on the dash, and it says rear seat reminder, check rear seat, and it has like a little icon of a child. And when I first got this rear seat reminder, when we first got this truck, my husband and I had like a lengthy discussion about the fact that it's so terrible that our society needs a rear seat reminder to remind people that there's a child in their car with them. I mean, on a basic human level, it just kind of angered me a little bit to think that we need this. I don't discredit the companies that use them. I think that, any effort to help children is a good effort. So I'm not at all criticizing the company. I'm just criticizing society as a whole. The fact that we need this is insane to me. So I did a little research because this kind of triggered me into some different thoughts. And I did a little research about children who've actually died in hot cars because they've been left in hot cars. Just a little bit of the background for you to understand. So according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in the United States, on average, 40 children per year die in a hot car because they're left in a hot car. 88% of those children are 3 years old or younger, and 55% of those children were left unknowingly in the car. So roughly half of the children are left knowingly and half are left unknowingly. That doesn't sound any better to me. Since 1990, at least 1,109 children have died in hot cars. And in 2024, we already have 27 confirmed cases. And when you go to, there's a website that you can go to kind of research this, and you can actually click on each instance and it comes up with like a news story that you can look at and kind of see the details around it that are available. And so you could kind of see the reasons. A lot of times people would leave children during work hours because they didn't have a babysitter. They would leave them in the car, or they would be on the way to work, forget that the kid is in the back seat, forget to go by daycare and drop the kid off. And then this child would stay in the seat while they go into work. They're rushing to work. In the grocery store, kids are left in cars. I saw one instance where the father left the child in the car so they could go play video games. And it's just the lack of intentionality in parenting today and the lack of basic needs being met for children is just in my opinion, it's a very extreme example. Okay, so children dying in a hot car, it's a very extreme example, but it's an extreme example of a very widespread issue in our society. And I think it has its basis. I know it has its basis in our relationship with God. And so I want to break down today the relationship between this specific extreme example to a biblical example and kind of break down the root cause of this idea of sacrificing children or intentionally or unintentionally killing children. So let's break it down. So in the Bible, child sacrifice is something that we see. Child sacrifice in the Bible is a worship to the god Molech. And Molech was the god of the Ammonites, okay? So I'm going to insert a picture here on the video so you can kind of see what this god looks like. But the god of the Ammonites, Molech, is described with like outstretched arms. Okay, it's like a bronze statue with outstretched arms. And these arms would be heated up by fire. So the metal would get very, very, very hot and the fire's underneath it. And these people who were worshiping this god would place their children into the burning hot hands of this idol, this false god, and the children would be burned alive at that point, or they would roll off these arms into the actual fire and they would be burned alive. And we see this noted in scriptures as the children were passed through the fire. So this is what this looks like. In Leviticus chapter 20, we see that before the children of Israel go into the promised land, God knows that this pagan worship already exists. The Ammonites are already there. So God has some very strict things to say to the children of Israel about when they go over. Leviticus chapter 20, verses 1 and 2. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Again, thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whosoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed, meaning his children, unto Molech, this is the god we're talking about, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And this passage goes on to describe the shunning and the, total disgust of God for this practice of child sacrifice. So obviously we can conclude from this passage that the children of Israel, of course, did not participate in this child sacrifice, right? They always did what Moses told them to do. That's a lie. Obviously not. We see several examples of the children of Israel worshiping Molech. And we see it even with the kings of Israel, specifically King Manasseh, which is found in 2 Kings chapter 21, and King Ahaz, which is found in 2 Chronicles chapter 28. Both of these kings of Israel, these rulers, these leaders, made child sacrifice. They caused their children to pass through the fires of Molech. And ultimately, we find that the children of Israel, in their very sinful lifestyle that they led them into captivity. I want to note here a very interesting passage in Proverbs chapter 6. And this passage names out and kind of lists 7 things that God hates, the 7 abominations that God hates. And the third item on this list is in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 17. It says, hands that shed innocent blood. So we understand on a basic level that God despises the person, the hands that would shed innocent blood. And childhood is very symbolic of innocence. It is before that total state of consciousness of humankind is reached. You have man shedding innocent blood when they are sacrificing these children. And to me, it seems like this is not only something God would hate, but all of mankind. I mean, it rubs me extremely the wrong way. And I think most people, most practical people would say that killing innocent children is just a horrific thing. So where did this start? Where did it come from? Let's talk about it. So as mentioned earlier, Molech is the god, the false god of the Ammonites. And the Ammonites are the descendants of Lot. So let's talk about this. Let's go into Lot's life and see where this might be rooted. So Lot is the nephew of Abram, who becomes Abraham. So Abram's father, Terah, leads Abram and Lot out of the land of Ur. Okay, so he leads them out of the land of Ur. When Abram's father, Terah, dies, Lot becomes attached to Abram. Lot kind of just follows Abram through his life and is blessed because Abram is blessed. So when God calls Abram, changes his name to Abraham, says, come out from among your kindred and I'm going to bless you and I'm going to make of you a great nation, Lot just kind of follows along with him and he journeys with him And as a byproduct of Abram's blessings, Lot is also blessed. We see that Lot has a very blessed life. And he follows Abram into Egypt when there's famine. He comes out of Egypt with Abram. And at some point, both of them have such great possession. They have servants, they have cattle. I mean, they just have so much that it causes conflict between these two large families. And so Abraham looks up and he says, Lot, look, we want to maintain our good relationship. We don't want there to be fighting between the two of us. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to look around, and I want you to look at this plain and look all over the land that we're in. And I want you to pick a direction. You go whatever direction you want, and I will go the other way. If you go east, I will go west. If you go west, I will go east. So Abraham basically gave Lot first choice to pick what he wanted. We find this in Genesis chapter 13. Verse number 10 says, "And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar." Verse 11, "Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom." Verse 13, "But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly." So there are a few things that I take away from what happens here. The first thing is that Lot chose where he was going to settle his family based on what he could see. We do not see here that he asked for the Lord's guidance. He was not seemingly concerned with the Lord's will or any of that. He just looks up and he sees, "Oh, this looks good. I like this. This looks like a place that, I could be happy." And he chooses it based on what he can see. For me, this immediately sends off alarm bells. It reminds me of the Garden of Eden. Whenever Eve looked at the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she said, "It looks good, so I'm just going to take that." That's what it reminds me of. The second thing is that not only did Lot choose based on what it looked like, but when he got into this place, he oriented his whole home, his whole camp, based on looking at this city of Sodom. So whenever they would open up their tent flaps in the morning, they would see the city of Sodom. It's exceedingly wicked and it's full of sin. And so every morning they're looking at this sinful city. So when we move on, after settling in this place, Lot and his family actually end up being taken prisoner because there's a war going on in the region between Sodom and another city, and Abraham comes to his rescue. And then we kind of lose Lot for just a little bit. And we don't hear about him a lot because the narrative is focusing on Abraham. But in chapter 19 of Genesis, we find Lot again after several years have passed. So let's look at this. Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. "And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom." This is super interesting because we can note a few things. Number one, Lot is no longer living outside of the city, but he is now inside of the city. Secondly, he is sitting at the gate of Sodom. Now, at this time, that phrase refers to the leaders of the city, because we see often that the leaders of the city would congregate at the gate and they would have converse in legal matters and things like that. So Lot sitting at the gate not only symbolizes that he's moved into this wicked city, but also that he has become a leader. He's gained prestige. He is someone that other people listen to inside of this city. So going through this story, these two angels come and they look like men. They come into the city of Sodom. Lot sees them and recognizes the danger because he knows this city, he knows the wickedness, and he convinces these two angels to come into his home for the night. At that point, the men of the city surround Lot's house. And don't forget, Lot's a leader. And they start banging on the door and they say, "Give us these two men that we can have them and rape them." The men of Sodom wanted to rape the two angels who they thought were men that had come into Lot's house. And Lot, at this point, his reaction to this is very, very interesting and very key in what we're talking about today. Lot says no. He is so morally opposed to the homosexual relationship that the men of Sodom were trying to activate with these men. He says, no, absolutely not. You cannot have these men. But I have 2 virgin daughters, my children, and you can have them, and you can rape them, and you can do whatever you want with them. So interesting. And hold on to that as we go through the rest of this story. So the men are not satisfied with that response. They say, no, we don't want your daughters. We want the men. We want to have a homosexual relationship. We want to rape those men. And so at this point, when they keep pressing onto the house, the angels in the house smite all of the men around the house with blindness so that they can't see. And the angels take Lot and his wife and his 2 virgin daughters, and they help them escape out of the city. At this point, God starts raining fire and brimstone and destroys the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Lot's wife turns back and looks longingly at what she feels like she's losing, and she's turned into a pillar of salt. So now it's Lot and his 2 daughters, and they are escaping away. They escape into a cave. When they get to the cave, Lot's daughters, recognizing that they have lost everything. They've lost their home. They lost their mother. They are virgins. They have no husbands. They have no prospects. They say, okay, we need to get our father drunk so that we can have sex with him, so that we can become pregnant and his seed will continue. So interesting, because these girls were raised in a sinful city, that they came up with this sinful solution to have incestual relationships with their father. But that's what they did. Now we're going to pick this up in Genesis chapter 19, verse 38. And the younger, which is the younger daughter, she also bare a son and called his name Ben-Ammi. And the same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. So catch this. Molech is the god of the Ammonites, who are the descendants from this relationship that Lot had with his daughter. What I find extremely interesting here is that the worship rituals and practices around worshiping Molech, the god of the Ammonites, is to have child sacrifice. You give your children to this god. In the same way that Lot was willing to sacrifice his own children. I believe that this Molech god obviously is a false god. There's only one true God. And I believe that the reason that sacrifice of children was involved in this worship practice is because Molech was a construct. It was a seed that started on the day that Lot was willing to sacrifice his daughters to these terrible men, wicked men around them. He was willing to sacrifice his daughters to be raped by these men. I think that it was a construct that started at that point, and it was passed down generation to generation, where the father figure, which we all see God as a father figure, the father figure involving and worshiping him was child sacrifice. And so it was just so interesting to me when I started to connect all of these pieces in my head. And you may say, well, how does this relate to us today? We don't practice child sacrifice. A lot of people have used this concept to equate to modern day abortion. And I think that argument definitely has its merits. And I believe that it's definitely something to look at and consider. But today I want to have a different application of the god of Molech. Here's the one I want to look at. In our current society, we are extremely digitally based, which means that we are visually based. Years ago, we used to read books, we used to read newspapers, we used to listen to the radio. Right now, everything is visual. The fact that I am doing this devotional through a digital visual interface just goes to further prove that point. Everything that we have in society is based on visuals. And We have such an issue with wanting things that we see. We want a car that we see. We want a home that we see. We want vacations that we see advertised. We want those feel-good moments that we feel in the commercial. We want experiences. We see people out in the world and our sexual desire takes over and we want it. As long as you have enough money available on a credit card limit, then you can have whatever you want. It's immorality. It is gluttony. It is just wanting everything that we can see. We're so consumer driven in our society. And I believe that our children are the ones that are paying for this. Just as the children were sacrificed to Molech, I believe in a very real way, our society is sacrificing the health of our children. We hand down our debt to our children and our poor practices with money. We hand down broken families caused by lust and acts in the moment that broke up a family. We hand down our addictions because of things that we saw and we wanted, and we consumed too much of that thing and we became addicted to it. We hand down our behavioral issues. All of this rolls downhill to our children. Also, I think it's important to note that those that are in the church world are also at risk for having this kind of behavior. Just like Lot believed himself to be moral, we who rub up against the society of the church believe ourselves to be moral beings. We have definite lines that we will not cross, and there are things that we know in our own self-righteousness that we would never do that. And yet we're willing to watch the world do all of these wicked things from our window. Just as Lot oriented his whole life to look at the world, even though he wasn't part of the world, we look at the world. We orient ourselves to watch what's going on in the world and take it all in, even with our moral justifications. It's so interesting that if you ask any home designer what most people orient their living rooms around, it's a TV. And what is a TV except a window through which we watch the world go by? So what should we orient our homes around? Well, in the camp of Israel, everything was oriented around the tabernacle, around the presence of God. I think that it's very delusional for us to not realize that we are all at risk for this. We are so at risk for bringing our children into a place where they are at risk because of our behaviors. There is a downstream effect on children by the choices that we personally make on a daily basis. We need a rear seat reminder today. As a mother, I have 3 souls that are going to live on for eternity that I am impacting every single day. With every single choice I make, I impact my children. And as a society, even if you don't have children, we have a young generation that is coming up, and what we orient ourselves toward, they will immerse themselves in. I believe it's time to pull back. It's time to separate, to be apart from the world so that we can raise our children centered around the presence of God. I know that this has been a very intense topic today, and I hope that this has blessed you and it has made you think and sparked some thoughts in your mind about your family and your home and your culture and society. If you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe for future videos. I will see you guys next time. Bye.